Because you, sir, are not one of us.
If you'll turn away, ladies, before we're contaminated.
Rory, take Hitler and put him in that cupboard over there. Now, do it.
Right. Putting Hitler in the cupboard.
On the 4th of July, 2024, the UK is holding its first general election since that time the choice was socialism or barbarism. The country chose barbarism. Of course it did, this is Britain we're talking about. This time, however, the choices are billionaire psychopath or sentient leg of ham, a much more interesting dilemma. Or at least, that's what they want you to think. In fact, there is a third option. Not the Lib Dems and their inflatable slides, or the Greens and their actual decent opinions apart from the nuclear stuff, but an option that will actually, finally, solve all of our problems. This July, vote for Giant Man-Eating Slug. Unlike the big two parties, Giant Man-Eating Slug doesn't accept fascists into its ranks, except of course to digest them, for the good of the colony. Giant Man-Eating Slug knows and will happily tell you that fascists are only good for eating. Sick of having your cries of eat the rich being ignored? Giant Man-Eating Slug has your back. With a long track record of eating rich kids and racists, the only option for real change this election are our new mates, the mollusks. Remember, on election day, don't vote Tory, don't vote Labour, vote for Giant Man-Eating Slug. Giant Man-Eating Slug. It's time for slime. Hi there, my name is Brigitte Empire, science and culture correspondent for the greatest newspaper in the world, only the Daily Bloody Telegraph, and I'm here to thank our newest sponsor, Giant Man-Eating Slug. When Giant Man-Eating Slug first sent over an email, I had a few questions. Firstly, how does it type without hands? Secondly, why us? Well, now I know. Only the Daily Telegraph has the right combination of deathless skeletal monsters and third-rate journalism to send the message Giant Man-Eating Slug needs the great British public to hear. That's being, fascists are food, not friends. A statement that only I agree with in this office right now, but I've been working on radicalising Dan for a few years now, and by the time he's 3,000 years young, I reckon I can at least convince him to vote for an actual living being instead of writing in Henry VIII's ghost again. While I have you here, however, have you seen the new season of Doctor Who yet? The one with Russell T Davies back at the helm? The one that's so good I remembered why I loved the show in the first place? Well, I did, and I want to talk about how it contemplates how to deal with the fascists present in everyday society. Do we platform them? Do we let them rage amongst themselves? Do we try and save them? Or do we feed them to our newest sponsor, Giant Man-Eating Slug? For those of you who don't know, Doctor Who is the longest running science fiction show in the world, beating out Star Trek by 3 years, though both have had long breaks in between iterations. It stars an alien time traveller that looks like one of them British actors you saw on British TV. Whether from that one show where British people look sadly at a disappointing beach, the one that was set in a school that they had to make look more American so Yanks wouldn't get confused, and that one where Brits look sadly at a disappointing beach. Also the thick of it.
I just want to tell you, I really enjoyed your novel.
Oh, thank you very much.
Way of writing a fucking awful story.
The newest season of the show stars Nshruti Gatwa as the Doctor, the first time the character has been played by a black man, which is something that has problematic implications. And in this season, he travels space and time with adult human Mancunian, Ruby Sunday, showing her new and awe-inspiring places in which to develop horrifying PTSD. Our proud sponsors, of course, Giant Man-Eating Slug that is, appear in the episode of the show entitled Dot and Bubble. And while you would be forgiven for getting the impression from the episode's trailer that it'll be the most boomer science fiction story ever told, it's actually, like most episodes this season, an incredible high-concept story of technology, prejudice, and yes, giant man-eating slugs. Remember to register to vote and bring your voter ID for the only candidate that will dissolve your problems in stomach acid. bubble follows the story of Lindy Pepperbean, an Aryan nation-ass looking young adult living in the utopian community of Fine Time, where her dot and bubble, essentially a holographic smartphone that augments your vision, guides her every move. Without it, she can't walk. She never learned how. And it turns out that this is, as you might imagine, a problem. Because a bunch of heroes, I mean giant man-eating slugs, are roaming around the city and eating people. The Doctor and Ruby call right into Lindy's social commentary headset to try and save her and the community by negotiating with the survivors and leading them to a way out. However, upon reaching their escape point, I regret to inform you that everyone in Fine Time is racist.
We couldn't travel with you.
Why not?
Because you, sir, are not one of us. I mean, so you were kind, although it was your duty to save me, obviously. I mean, screen-to-screen contact is just about acceptable, but in person, that's impossible. Like, you have a magic box? Seriously.
Big on the inside.
Excuse me, sir, that's voodoo. And it doesn't matter where we end up living, because it is our God-given duty to maintain the standards of Fine Time forever.
You might have figured that out a little bit earlier, when Lindy instantly blocked the Doctor, when she was shocked he was in the same room with a white woman, when she implied he was stupid, when she instantly hated him, when she implies that he will be disciplined for even talking to her. She also basically murders her crush for selfish reasons too, as if you need more reasons to dislike her. In a bleak and powerful ending, the story wraps up with the Doctor unable to convince any of the gaggle of Hitler Youth wannabes to let him save them. And the more he tries, the more overt their racism gets. In the end, all the Doctor can do is watch and weep as the remaining population sails happily to their deaths.
We can all die! Out there! And I can save your lives! Now let me!
And then, if you were me, you watch the behind-the-scenes interviews with writer and showrunner Russell T Davies, who mock fits a sin, and from that show where someone is trans-computer for some reason.
I'm not comfortable with my body, so I want to get rid of it.
Now, Russell is no stranger to putting anti-fascist messaging into his fiction, both historical and sci-fi, but I wasn't expecting this ending from him. In the UK, the liberals I usually associate Russell with are very much of a mind that we should let the fascists speak, let them have a voice, and let their voice be drowned out in that mythical marketplace of ideas. But Russell, in the behind-the-scenes footage, had a different take.
The episode is kind of weaning her off social media. She's learning to see the truth. So you kind of think that's the moral of the story, which is look around you. Except the moral of the story turns out to be someone that's better in her bubble because she's the monster. And the moment we cast Shooty, everyone said to me, oh my God, what's he going to be like when he goes into the past? Because the Black Doctor's going to face such racism. And you sit there going, what about now? And why do you think racism's only in the past? When you look at what's happening to the world.
And so, we find ourselves with a story that is indeed a commentary on social media and how it controls our lives, but is in particular about a certain bubble on social media. Everyone on the internet, to an extent, has their own bubbles. You don't, for obvious reasons, want to talk to strangers or people you strongly disagree with. That just makes for an unpleasant experience. You can't speak to people who speak in a language you don't understand, both metaphorical and literal. So naturally, we are, being after all only human, not being omniscient, restricting our interactions by our very nature, even in a world as vast and open as the post-internet Earth is. You can only store so much data in your head, and even if you had the time and energy to deal with everyone, why would you willingly stay in prolonged contact with someone who rubs you the wrong way, someone who hates you, or, if you were the characters in the story, someone you hate? I find a lot of the talk about bubbles as often directed solely at the left. People worry that people are self-radicalizing as they interact increasingly only with people that agree with them. And to an extent, that is true, but people only openly worry about this on the left because socialism as a concept is seen as a threat to the current order, whereas its counter is not, and is in fact necessary to keep the current world from being overthrown by those that insist on steamrolling over for profit. What we should be more concerned about is that counter, is fascist social media bubbles. And if Russell T Davies is to be believed, we should be watching them and making sure that they stay there, the fascists that is, better in their bubble than in the outside world, where they can do real and tangible harm. As long as they're just talking to each other, raging at walls of text and at women in video games, they're not marching in the streets, storming the Capitol, staging a coup, or committing crimes against humanity. For the left, the same media environment that urges us to go out and protest, to organise, to fight back against these fascists can, unfortunately, hold us back from taking that action. By the nature of social media, as an all-encompassing, sometimes very addictive, force in our lives, A force that keeps us glued to our phones when we might be better off occupying a campus, building community, or blocking access to an arms company. But all ideologies, and therefore all bubbles, are held back in this same way. Not every frothing at the mouth fascist on Twitter is truly as dedicated in person as they are online. Not every Pepe avatar was there on January 6th. Sometimes the addictive nature of social media keeps the very people it pushed to the far right off the street. But I don't know how prominent a current that actually is. And as much as some of the most radicalized are prolific posters, I don't know if that necessarily means that they stay on social media and out of actual activism. Because a lot of people, unfortunately for us, find ways to do both. Or to use that bubble to do more harm than they might ever have managed to do in the real world by itself. If we replace Lindy in our story with, say, Elon Musk, we see someone who is on social media all hours of the day, is bad at posting, genuinely isn't funny, but is convinced he is, and when he goes on regular media, he just sounds like an alien. Because his brain is absolutely poisoned by the fascist content he's gulping down all day and regurgitating like a phalangist mother bird. Just look at how he comes across in a pretty softball interview with Don Lemon recently.
These are just a handful of extremely, if you look at those anti-Semitic and racist tropes and tweets, and as of this morning, they're still on X. And from your own content policy, these posts should have been deleted, so why haven't they been deleted? Why are they still there? We delete things if they are illegal. But these have been up there for a while. Are they illegal? No, they're not illegal, but they're hateful and they can lead to violence. As I just read to you, the shooters, in all of these mass shootings, attributed social media to radicalizing.
So Don, you love censorship, is what you're saying?
No, I don't love censorship.
Then why are you asking?
I believe in moderation, but I don't believe in
censorship. Moderation is a propaganda word for censorship.
I do think, however, it's a little naive to assume that social media as a force is always as pacifying as it can be radicalizing, however. For every fascist who becomes a shut-in keyboard warrior with no designs in the outside world other than to rage, you get an Elliot Rodger. Someone whose radicalization on niche social media communities, in this case the absolutely bananas incel community, led him to commit unspeakable horrors in revenge for an enmity against him and people like him that was entirely imagined. Or maybe you get someone who doesn't even need to log off to cause harm to thousands of vulnerable people. Someone like Kaya Reichik, aka Libs of TikTok.
David is trying to frame me as some kind of dangerous, violent extremist who just causes bomb threats all over the country. And I think that the reason they're doing it, and they say so in that clip, is because they want to psych law enforcement on me to investigate and prosecute me for simply sharing what they themselves are doing.
Using just her social media presence, Kaya Reichik has directed her millions of followers to threaten and commit acts of terror on any place that is even suspected of being friendly to drag queens, trans people, or queer people in general. She does this all firmly within her bubble. But were she to run for office rather than do these things behind the smokescreen, things could get much worse. Even as dangerous as she is, she's better online than she is in the street. And the main problem with her being online is that she's not in a bubble. She's out in the open. Despite her being essentially a domestic terrorist acting out in the open, she's not only allowed to operate on social media, but she is encouraged, and her work promoted by Elon Musk, for example, still running Twitter despite technically not being the CEO anymore. He follows her, he shares her stuff, and Twitter, unlike a lot of the other social media sites, leaves your profile open to all as the default. Through this platform, she is not in a bubble, she is at a megaphone. Were she just a strange Facebook mum like most of the people of her temperament, talking to her cousins and a few neighbours, she would be much less dangerous. For all people like to act like Twitter has no influence on real life, on there she is given a platform, and fascists do not get a platform. If they want to talk, let them talk inside their bubble. Let them just talk to each other. Do not give them the opportunity to spread their words like a sermon from a mountaintop. By making herself a public figure, she has burst the bubble, and she is loose. And like the residents of Fine Time, without being isolated in her little curated world, her true ugliness is revealed and projected. Not dampened by her isolation, not hidden from us by our wish to not contact her.
Curious kind of how you're thinking, when you think about the way that you put out content and the way that you think about growing your media empire.
Here, this is a blowjob.
While Doctor Who has always had allusions to fascism as one of the Doctor's great enemies in the past, famously, after all, the Daleks were meant to represent the Nazis early in the show, less than 2 decades after the fall of the Third Reich when the horrors were fresh in people's heads. all the way to Matt Smith's Doctor trapping Hitler himself in a cupboard for a slapstick joke. The levels of abstraction used here, however, can sometimes take away from the sting of the message. One of the scariest things about fascism is that it's perpetrated by humans, people you might even know, people you might have called friends or family. That most dangerous and bloodthirsty of ideologies is not a relic of the past. It's not an alien that you can defeat with the right combination of gusto and technobabble. It's real. It's here. And it's unfortunately very human. As Russell T. Davies himself said earlier in this video.
From the moment we cast shooting, everyone said to me, "Oh my god, what's it going to be like when he goes into the past? Because the Black Doctor's going to face such racism." And you sit there going, what about now? And why do you think racism's only in the past? When you look at what's happening to the world?
When the Doctor is face to face with a group of humans who are so disgusted by the idea of a black man that they actively choose to go to their deaths rather than let him try to save them, that hurts viscerally because it's real. Throughout the story, you can see the microaggressions, the disdain, the insidious nature of a racism so ingrained that the characters don't even notice enough to react to. The way it weaves through society and the way it indoctrinates those who grew up in it, especially in its positions of power, to recreate the same prejudices and accept them into themselves as if they were as natural as breathing. White supremacy is woven into the tapestry of their society, and in this way, Fine Time is very much like the world we live in right now. To quote Russell once again, "If you doubt me, look at what's happening to the world."
Polls ahead of the EU election show that the far-right parties are surging across Europe. And interestingly, young voters have emerged as a key demographic driving their success.
Population of this country has exploded by 6 million since the Conservatives were in power, and the vast majority of that is directly down to immigration.
And it's tragic. And you know in your heart, perhaps naively, that given enough time, you might be able to change these fascist minds. But what happens then when they refuse to be changed? When the idea of you changing them at all actively makes you worse in their head? These fascists look some other person in the eye, and because of some accident of their birth, they declare them an enemy. And that instinct can be weaponized with deadly force. So yes, there will be some who will be able to break out of their bubble, to reintegrate into society, to deprogram themselves from the horrifying things they've been convinced of. But not everyone is going to be willing. And as long as the core of your worldview, the purpose of your politics, involves the elimination of the other, you are the monster, not some slug. Doctor Who does try and drill into us every which way that many monsters can be redeemed. And I won't go into that in detail, lest people find out that I actually enjoyed Space Babies, but you can't force someone to change. They have to be persuaded. They have to be willing to go at least a step forward so that you can take them on the rest of that journey. If they refuse that step, what do? What can you do? You can try everything you can, but sometimes, even when offered every opportunity at redemption, a monster will turn it down, unwilling to budge on, or perhaps even taking pride in its monstrosity. In this way, Dot and Bubble reminded me of another incredible Doctor Who story, The Family of Blood, the conclusion to a two-parter that started with Human Nature, where the Doctor is trying to spare a group of malicious aliens hell-bent on using his nature as a Time Lord capable of regenerating himself upon death to make themselves immortal. The Doctor hides from them, even forgetting his friends and turning himself human to try and wait them out. It doesn't work. And after their attacks lead to him having to reawaken and save those he hid with, he gives them what they asked for. It's brutal, but it's powerful. Because you know how hard the Doctor tries to save everyone. The compassion he has for every species, every person, and the lengths he goes to keep this side of him in check. But sometimes you reach out a hand to help someone up, and they pull out a gun. In fact, nothing represents this better in the canon of the show than the Time Lords themselves, the race of space Tories that raise the Doctor and are shown over and over again to be arrogant, cruel, self-serving, and often sneering imperialists, As much as the Doctor will often reminisce about his home and his people, his memories of them are often rose-tinted and hopeful as he tries to remember their good sides. When they appear in a story, they're usually antagonistic, if not outright villains. In fact, in Russell T Davies's last story before ending his original run, the Doctor, when confronted with the prospect of his people returning, and returning to their full past glory and more, destroying everything so they are everything that's left, he banishes them from the universe, losing his people for a second time by his own hand.
Alex from Tyrants, Cybermen. They're still in the nursery compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really corrupt.
So remember, this election, do not let villains enter our dimension and destroy the universe, as Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer have both all but promised to do. Instead, be like the Doctor and save the world by voting for the people's hero, giant man-eating slug. Mollusks of the world, unite! You have nothing to lose but your flesh and bones and other things. But the important thing is, these slugs eat fascists, and that's more than you can say for the competition. So unless Keir Starmer personally eats the flesh of Nigel Farage on live TV, vote with your conscience. Vote for giant man-eating slug. And thanks for watching. Hey, while I've got you here, the computer that I make all of these videos on is dying. And I mean, dying. If you wondered what that fuzzy noise, the horrible static that was there for a bunch of my videos last year was, that was the computer. I just about managed to sort the sound out so the screaming doesn't get in the way, but I hear it. And now its last charging slot, I should explain, I had an original charging slot, it broke years ago. I'm using the USB-C port, that's also stopped working. I held it at an angle with a bit of tissue paper and it's been working for the last couple of weeks, but it's only a matter of time. So if you have any spare money, please, 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 please consider helping me get a new computer. And I will do not just these videos on it, I will start streaming for you, I'll give you more content, and also these videos might even come out faster because you have no idea how long it takes to export things on this. Jesus Christ, my life would be so much easier. So please consider just giving a £1 or £2 to the GoFundMe in the description so that I can continue doing this amazing thing that I love. And yeah, apart from that, thank you for watching to the end of this video. If you liked it, why not also like it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, share it with your friends. And if you also have some coins left after giving to my GoFundMe, you can help me get out my overdraft as well. Would that be nice? You can do that by giving donations on Coffee or PayPal, links below as always, or signing up to my Patreon, where you get early videos, access to the members-only Discord, my Nintendo Switch friend code, exclusive content such as long-form, that's not a word, exclusive content such as long-form interviews with Princess Weeks, Rosenkreutz, and Jessie Gender. And in addition to all that good stuff, you'll also, if you sign up, get your name read out at the end of each video, just like these lovely people. Deborah Laban, Vegish, Zilla's Athenium, Vince Whitaker, Amelia Unchained, Sarah Rudston, Jason Haig, Frank McManus, Susan Foster, Helena, Sierra Whiskey, Arestria, Annie Catgirl, John N, Scully, Jan, Lloyd Luciente, Jason Cribbett, Shield Vaden, Robin Podolsky, Exploding Turtle, Casual Observer, Terry Roberts, Manta Ray, Courtney Burmack, Sleepy Slug, Philippa Tabrogo, Soma Piglet, Brain Douche, Artie Wolf, Hayden Gala, Greg Noble, Deanna McMillan, Caroline Regalado, Alexandra Lilly, Howard Lott, Nerania, Scarjan, and Joey Cobalt. Thank you so much for everyone that supported me. Everyone else, if you even have like a spare £1, just please just throw the GoFundMe. I love doing this. A lot of you said you like it as well. Some of you I know don't. You're not going to get the end of this video, so I don't even know I'm acknowledging you. But yeah, no, I'd love to continue, so please help me out. Until next time, vote for giant man-eating fucking slug. New candidate for... What's a slug name in Britain? Hull. Let's say they're candidate for Hull. Who's the MP for Hull? Well, now they're a slug.